Sean Starr. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. I appreciate you reaching out and being willing to do this. I think it's going to be a great conversation based off of everything that I've seen of your work and our previous conversations leading up to this. Let me start off by giving you a introduction for the audience to get a glimpse into your career.
Okay.
You are a master gilder and second generation artist with 35 plus years of experience, a renowned traditional craftsman in sign painting, gilding, decorative work, and verre eglomise. Did I say that correctly?
Ver Eglomaze is how that's.
Okay. I appreciate that because I
Yeah.
mess it up again. But you've been
Yeah, and I'm
serving.
probably not pronouncing it perfectly correctly, but that's typically how I've heard it.
All right. But you've been serving clients across the U.S. and internationally. You're featured in the acclaimed documentary and book Sign Painters, recognized as a leading figure in contemporary sign painting. You've exhibited widely in galleries and institutions, with original works shown in major art hubs such as New York, San Francisco, LA, Dallas, Houston, Chicago, Philly, Napa Valley, San Antonio, and abroad in Ireland. You are the producer and host of Art is Love, Nepal, award-winning 2019 documentary released in 2024 that highlights traditional craftsmanship in Nepal. You're an esteemed lecturer and live demonstrator and podcast host, with dozens of engagements at museums, universities, art organizations, and conferences worldwide since the mid-2000s, and currently host of your own podcast, Coffee with a Sign Painter.
Yep, that's exhausting to hear it all put that way, but yes, that's all correct.
I can sometimes that is. Once I get through that, the guests are usually like, "Really? I've done all of that?"
I think it just means I'm old now.
Well, either that, or you could look at it as like you're just starting on your second half of life.
Yeah, let's
Either
go with
way,
that one. That's better.
right? So I only have one scripted question, and it's always the first, and it is, where were you born, and what was life like as a kid for Sean?
Wow. Okay, that's not a simple answer
Okay.
question for me. Um, do you want the Cliff Notes version or do you want the deep dive?
No, I want the deep dive. I want the deep
Uh,
dive on everything.
okay, so my parents grew up in the Cleveland area. My dad grew up in Cleveland. My mom grew up on a farm about 30, 40 minutes south of Cleveland.
Okay.
And in the late 60s, they decided they wanted to go to California. And so they moved out to San Diego. And from what my dad told me, he had dreams of writing and publishing a book, and so he wanted to go to California to do that. And so they went out, and I was born in San Diego in 1968.
Okay.
We were only there after I was born, I believe, 2 years, and then they moved back to Cleveland. And then from Cleveland, when I was 6 or 7 years old, they moved down to South Texas, and that's where the bulk of my memories are, and that's where I grew up.
Okay. So there wasn't a whole lot of memories in terms of schooling, elementary school, up until like 8 years old.
Just I've got a few faint memories of like elementary school, or like kindergarten, that kind of thing in Cleveland, but nothing clear. Most of everything I remember and was influenced by was from Texas on.
Okay. And how was that for you when you got to Texas? shifting into another elementary school? Was it a situation of maybe potential excitement, or was there a little bit of fear there because you didn't know anybody, or how did that?
My parents were very nomadic,
Okay,
and so even at the point that we moved to Texas, it was a lot of moving throughout my childhood.
gotcha.
I counted it up one time with my brother, and uh, we we lived in more houses than the grades that we went through in school. If that
Oh
tells you
wow.
anything, yeah.
Okay,
So there's no outstanding reason why that happened. I think my uh, parents had wanderlust
sure.
to a certain extent. It wasn't like there was instability. It was just they just moved a lot. And then as I became an adult, I ended up moving a lot. So
Okay.
um, yeah,
And you mentioned a brother. Did you have any other siblings, or was it just you and him?
yeah. I was the youngest of the first four.
Okay.
And then when I was a teenager, my parents had two more additional kids. So there's six of us total.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's a bit of a gap as well.
Yeah.
I can relate to that. I've got two sisters, an older sister that's 7 years older,
Hmm.
and I've got a younger sister that's 9 years younger.
Okay.
And my older sister was from my dad's first marriage. Both my parents are from East Tennessee,
Hmm.
and so she never lived with us. And my parents came up here to Michigan in the '60s. My
Okay.
dad was a mechanic uh, by trade, so he came up here for work just because there was more opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
So with
Yeah.
your dad, with your dad,
Pardon?
he's a was he doing sign painting all along, or was he doing multiple things?
Um, well, when he first got out of school, he went to work at a screen printing shop. I guess there was this humongous printing shop in Cleveland.
Okay.
And he went and worked with my uncle there for several years. Um, and then it wasn't really until we moved to Texas that he got fully into everything. And his first shop, and that was the shop that I started learning in as a teenager, was called Star Custom Paint. And he opened that in San Antonio in '77.
Okay.
Before that, he had been doing that kind of work under some other people. And he opened that shop as a custom paint shop. And so we were doing old hot rods, doing pinstriping, lettering, custom paint, boats, airplanes. We did Willie Nelson's tour bus one year. It
Nice.
was, just, and it was really incredible. Like that was my exposure to it was just that this is what we do.
Right. Yeah.
And, but, we were, driving all over the state of Texas and working for these wild, like rancher rich guys that, like out of a movie, smoking big cigars and throwing cash around and
Yeah.
painting up their Suburbans. And it was super exciting and fun. And I just thought that's what a job was because like I didn't have any other exposure.
Right.
But super, super creative work. We had different guys that came in from the West Coast that would work there for a while, and they'd bring in all these really awesome, badass techniques that nobody in our area was doing, and so we'd incorporate that. And yeah, it was a really neat stretch doing all of that, and that's where I got my start. I ended up building on that knowledge. Excuse me, I'm fighting allergies. As I got older, my dad eventually passed away in 1994, and I took a job up in Seattle and started working in sign shop there, and just kind of stacked knowledge to the point of opening the studio that I run today. I actually opened a studio in San Francisco in 2005. I had moved from Seattle down to San Francisco before moving back to Texas.
Gotcha. With having that early on experience, kind of tagging along with your dad across Texas, was it difficult to keep up with your schooling in elementary?
Um, Not at all, because I had zero interest or involvement in school. So, I literally had straight D's, and I didn't go to high school. Um,
Okay,
yeah, then there's a whole story attached to that. When we get to the mental health portion, I suppose I can cover some of that. But
gotcha.
yeah, I just had zero interest in school. Um, as an adult, I've read well over 1,000 books. I'm an avid reader and like self-educated person in that sense, but I hated school. I hated the structure of it, and my parents were a very strange mix of strict and disciplined in some ways, and in other ways, it was I've told friends before I was raised feral,
Okay,
so it was this weird mix of like there were certain strict rules, and then the rest of it was kind of a free for all.
that's interesting. That's very interesting. Um, what did your mom have a kind of specialty at all in terms of work, or was she just a stay-at-home mom?
No, she was a stay at home mom. My parents got married really young. Uh, I think my mom was 16 when they got married, very typical back in that era.
Yeah.
And, she had my oldest brother like immediately. And then just, the rest of us came along. And, my dad was, uh, his parents were immigrants, very typical for Cleveland area. And, he had an insane work ethic. He could outwork anybody. And I was, so fortunate to have that be the person that taught me how to work, because
Right.
he taught me how to work hard and not complain about it. So I've been very thankful about that throughout my life, that was the person that exposed me to this is how you do things.
Right. For sure. For sure. So you're already getting to experience a work life as a kid, realistically,
Hmm.
and you're hating school. Um, was there any extracurricular stuff like sports or anything introduced to you? Because I know Texas is kind of a big football state.
Yeah, no, I had a very strange upbringing in a sense. So I was my mom had converted from Catholicism to becoming a Jehovah's Witness before I was born,
Okay.
and there was this kind of weird tug of war. Um, my older siblings kind of like they had to go do that, but because I was the younger one, I had the option to like go to the movies with my dad, and so I always chose that, of course.
Right.
Um, but eventually, my dad got involved with it too, um, and that was just the like group that I grew up around, and the belief system that I grew up from birth with, and that that created a lot of long term challenges for me, that you know led to a lot of different struggles of trying to um, not all groups are the same,
Right.
obviously.
Yeah.
So having viewpoints or ideas or beliefs that are um, off the beaten path of a group like that is not allowed. So I kind of developed this dualistic way of living for quite a few years until I eventually just severed ties with it altogether, which is kind of in that group the nuclear option, because then you're completely cut off from everybody that's still involved in it. So
Right.
yeah,
Right. No,
but
exactly.
it was oddly the most freeing and liberating thing for me in regards to things like mental health, but it came at a high cost.
Sure, I can imagine. I can imagine. I've had a bit of experience with that. My grandfather on my mom's side, um, he was a Southern Baptist minister
Mm, yeah.
down in Tennessee. But whenever we were there, it, it never felt like it was overbearing or anything like that. Um,
Uh-huh.
and then in fourth grade, my parents decided to put me into a private fundamental Baptist Christian school.
Okay.
That became the overbearing part uh,
Mm-hmm.
of my childhood and into my teens and stuff. So I can understand the mindset of having a system that is kind of overbearing in terms of things that you're supposed to do and believe in and different things like that. And internally, you might be having a struggle in trying to rationalize all of that in a way.
Yeah, and I've always been a very outspoken person, which, that's a bad trait in a group like that because
Yeah.
you're asking questions that they
Yes.
don't want you asking and raising, well, what about this and what about that? And so I'm sure I was a thorn in the side, to people as well. I don't have any ill feelings towards anyone
Sure.
involved in it. I feel like everybody's finding what they need where they find it.
Yeah.
But for me, it. I think the thing that created so many challenges was um, it took me years to get out of the loop of kind of being duplicitous
Okay.
because for self-preservation, um, I would literally like do whatever work I had for the day and then go to like a bookstore, for a couple hours before I needed to go home.
Yeah.
And I'd read about stuff that, were off limits
Yeah.
things to
Yeah.
read about. And, that's a really unhealthy way to live.
Yeah.
And it creates, some bad habits of, just kind of like, well, it's only safe to portray this to these people, but I'm really thinking that it's just not a good way to live.
Right.
Um, and not everybody's like that. There's still very genuine, sincere people in that group. But for me, with my viewpoints and predispositions, it was not good.
Right. Right. Yeah. I was about to ask that in terms of if you had any outlets outside of working with your dad that were kind of the creative escape. And you're saying you went to the bookstores. Was there any kind of drawing starting to take place during that time as well?
Yeah, I started painting really young, just something I really wanted to do. I got from a very young age. I'm still fascinated with birds for some reason.
Okay.
And, I've got a nerdy little bird app on my phone and I keep track of birds that I see and all that kind of stuff.
Cool.
And so I started painting birds pretty young, probably 10, 11 years old, um, just because I liked it. And then when I became a teenager, my brother and I started really getting into music. And
Okay.
so we started a band. We ended up playing in Austin on 6th Street, for a
Nice.
couple of years and doing all of that whole thing when I was young. Um, so I've always had some kind of creative outlet, but it wasn't like, how do I put it? I've heard people describe, uh, I've kind of turned off like kind of but like the Hollywood version of what an artist should be, that kind
Sure.
of
Yeah. Yeah.
scripting that we've all been fed
Yeah.
of, like, tortured Van Gogh cutting his ear off kind of stuff.
Right.
It's just something that I just really have always loved doing, is whether it's making music or painting or, the really in-depth craftsmanship stuff. Just, it's just what I like to do. Like some people like to go out and throw a football. I was never into sports.
Right, right. Yeah, it's in your blood. It's in your genes. It's who you are. Uh, Essentially, you're a creative, and always have been.
Yeah, and it doesn't come from some um, tortured place. I don't think where like
Right.
I've got to get it out there and let people hear my voice, kind of thing. It's just I would be really bored on this planet if I didn't do all this stuff that I do, which is a lot of stuff, as the intro posed.
Yeah.
Like I just really love doing stuff and meeting creative people and getting juiced up by, meeting, like when we started talking, it's like fireworks going off. It's like
Yeah.
speaking the same language. So yeah, it's like that's fun and exciting to me, and that's why I do it.
Right. Right. No, I'm same way. Same way. I think that's probably why we're um, fastly connected, uh, instantaneous. It's just that intuitive connection
Mm-hmm,
is
mm-hmm.
there
Yeah,
amongst creatives. Um,
yeah.
with slipping into those high school years or leading up to those, um, let's talk about that era of you're not doing well, you're not liking it to begin with, and you're potentially about to go into some high school. And what takes place around that time?
Okay, so you said no guardrails, so
Yeah, no guardrails.
I'll just give you the the story. So when I was 14, um, there was a family friend, is a woman who was 32 at the time,
Okay.
and this beautiful, vivacious woman that, like, uh, everyone in our sphere was, like that's like the Marilyn Monroe of our world, kind of thing.
Gotcha.
And we ended up getting involved, and I know that's a subject now that people talk about, those kind of age differences, very controversial, and it wasn't, I don't think, as sensational then. However, it was extremely sensational in the community that I had grown up in, of
Right.
very religious people. It was very scandalous.
Yeah.
Um, and so this whole thing went on for about a year in secret.
Okay.
And it culminated in um, essentially some of the adults in the room figuring out what was going on. And so we took off and we ran around in the Texas Hill Country down here for days with people looking for us. And it was, this big
Okay.
thing. But it was extremely scandalous. And, the group that I was in was very upset about it. And my reaction of just wanting to get away from that pressure was I got up and moved on my own to Florida at
Okay.
15.
Okay.
And so I lived out there until I was just before I turned 19. And so I just rented a room in a house out there with this old lady named Irene, who had like some really sketchy people that she'd rent rooms to. And
Okay.
and I would sit and watch the Bob Newhart show with her. And I just lived out there. And I got a job with this guy. I called a guy in a Yellow Pages, and he had a company cleaning windows, and so I started working for him, and made some friends and just hung out for a while.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that reached a point where by the time I was nearing 19, I was feeling kind of homesick, and I was kind of like, okay, what do I do now?
Right. Right.
Because just a kid,
Yeah.
I was a very uh, older looking kid, even at 15,
Gotcha.
but I was still a kid.
Right.
So I hadn't spoke to my parents since I left, And so I called my dad and I said, hey, I'm out here in Florida and I just been kind of hanging out, but I kind of want to come home. And he said, get home, you can work with me. And so I had worked with him as a young teenager, and even in junior high, I worked with him all summer, every summer. That was like mandatory. I started paying room and board when I was, I think, 12 or 13.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it was like you got to get up and work because you got to pay room and board. It was not a lot of money, but he was establishing that kind of ethic. But so I came back, and at that point, my parents had moved out to West Texas in the middle of the desert, and so I moved in with them, and we were working out of my dad's station wagon, his old '70s Chevy station wagon, and we were driving all over Texas. Doing stuff out there, and it was awesome. And not long after, I ended up marrying a girl and having a kid immediately.
Okay.
And so was sprung into adulthood like right out of the gate, and had to figure that out really quick.
Right. With taking off to Florida, did that have a kind of a negative effect from your parents' standpoint in terms of whether or not they wanted you to leave or not wanted you to leave? Was it just that, or did you just say, look, I can't handle all this pressure of this conversation. I got it.
There wasn't much discussion. I just was like, I'm going to go do this now. I'm sure, looking back on it, it's probably a real distortion on my part of like, well, I've done these adult things. Like, I'm an adult now and I can go do what I want with my life. But like,
I'm
still a kid. I look back on it with horror because today I'll meet a 15-year-old and go, oh my God, like this person out on their own, that would stress me out even hearing about that,
Right.
But, yeah, that's what I did. And it wasn't a negative experience. Okay. And I came back and it was like, oh, okay, you're back. No one asked questions. It wasn't like, what'd you do, out there. It was just like, okay, you're back and let's go to work.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Interesting. Did, when you got back as well, was your mom kind of just as happy as your dad was in terms of your back?
I was never close with my mom, and I never have been. Okay. And none of my siblings really have been. She's, I want to speak ill of my mother, but sure. She's been a challenging person for all of us kids, our whole lives to deal with. Sure. So, she's got her own challenges and things. And, so I was never close with her. I was close with my dad. And so when he died in 94, at that point, we were in business together, and, we, worked daily together, and we were close. And so that kind of started started the path of what led me to things like pharmaceutical drugs and things, and a period of roughly 5 years that was a big, deep black hole.
Right. After your dad passed, you're saying?
Yeah. So when he passed away, about a year later is when I took a job offer at a sign shop up in Seattle area.
Gotcha.
And,
right.
And that's when I left Texas and got up there. And, you had asked about kind of the culture shock of like going from Cleveland to Texas, but there's not much memory of that. But the culture shock of going not only from Texas, but specifically South Texas to the Northwest was huge for me because, South Texas, it's still very much like the Old West in the sense that there's not any real regulations. There's not any real oversight, anything like that. And then to go to the Pacific Northwest where, things are heavily regulated like they are up on the West Coast, that was really challenging. I didn't understand at all, like wait, you have to get permits for things, you have to do this. Like, it was so foreign to me.
Yeah, for sure. I can imagine. With getting married and having your kid, did that um, did that situation amplify any of that stress of working daily with your dad, in terms of I may need to make more money other than what I'm making?
Oh, sure. I mean, just the fact of having a kid that young. I was 19 when my son was born.
Yeah.
Um, and just having a kid that young was like, uh, you know, I knew just instinctively, as well as the way I had been raised by my dad, like, um, you have to figure this out.
Right.
Like, you're now responsible for this kid. It's not just you. It's not just you and your wife. You've got to take care of this kid. And I took that very seriously, but, it was very difficult to go from, you know, just getting by to, oh, okay, now this kid's going to need shoes and clothes and backpack for school and all these things, So
Right.
um, that very much put me in. Um, it was stressful, but I mean, it's kind of a rite of passage thing anyway, isn't it? I mean, if you have a kid at 30, like, you're
Sure.
going to get hit with those realities of like, oh wow, I've got to like man up here and take care of this.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. And did you take the whole family off to Seattle with you? Your wife and
Uh,
kid?
yeah, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
How was that for them? I know you said it was a shock for you. How was that for them as well?
My wife at the time, her family was all from there, and by that point, her her family had moved to Texas,
Okay.
probably around the same time mine did.
Gotcha.
So, um, and then they had gone back, and
Okay.
so they were kind of like lobbying for us to end up there anyway. And so when my dad died, it was just a really logical choice, and it was my ex mother-in-law that helped me get the job at the sign shop and things like
Okay.
that. So
Okay.
they wanted, her and their grandson up there, obviously. So
Sure. Sure. And at that point, being up there, having those stressors of culture shock, realistically, um, was that one of the things that potentially led to the substance intake?
um well, when my dad passed away, I operated the business on my own. It was just he and I, but
Yeah.
I operated alone, and it was going to take about a year for my mom and my little brother and sister to be able to get the life insurance money.
Okay.
And so I promised my dad in the hospital that he asked me to take care of them, and I promised him I would, and I did. But for that 9 months to a year or whatever the period was, I was working 7 days a week, like 18 hours a day,
Yeah.
just because I was supporting myself and my wife and kid, and now my mom and my brother and sister. But I did what I said I would do, and I feel good about that. But that kicked off. It, it was really stressful, obviously, and
Sure.
I had really hard time sleeping, and I kind of had a thing with that going on already. And so my older sister said, "Oh, well, you should talk to my doctor." And this was, let's see, that would be mid '90s,
Yeah.
and so a lot of what we know about pharmaceutical drugs like Xanax and these kind of things now
Yeah.
But back then it was just like, oh, we've got this thing.
Right. Write a
And
prescription.
so, yeah. And so I went in and saw her doctor, and he put me on, I don't even remember what it was, but it was something to help me sleep. And then he started giving me Xanax, which led to, you know, getting addicted to Xanax, which it's extremely addictive. It's like
Yeah.
similar to heroin, is what they told me when I went through the detox process.
Yeah.
And so got up to Washington State, was working up there, and went through this cycle of I would be taking something that they prescribed, and then I would get some horrible side effects.
Yeah.
And so I'd go to the doctor and say, I can't take this any longer. And, well, just try it for 3 more months. And you're miserable for 3 months. And they're like, okay, we're going to switch you to this. Or we're going to add this, which will help with the side effects. And it just became this cocktail thing. And so there was a period of probably 5 years, I'm guessing. I don't even honestly have a clear recollection of it. But it was just a really on again, off again, hospitalizations, detoxing. It was so chaotic and miserable. And then that all kind of led up to, my marriage at the time was unraveling. And so there was a point towards the end of that relationship where I remembered looking, and I had the pills that I was supposed to take that morning in my hand, and there were 14 pills.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I was looking at that, and there was just some, something inside of me saying, if you keep doing this, you're going to die.
Right.
And I was convinced that that was true. So I threw them in the trash can, and I've never touched another pharmaceutical since. And that was 2004.
Wow. 14. And were all of them supposed to be for like mental health, anxiety?
At that point, it was everything, because from the stress that I was under mixed with the drugs I was taking, I was, they were giving me drugs. I had developed like an ulcer and a hiatal hernia. Like it was just,
Yeah.
I was a train wreck.
Yeah.
And so they just kept giving me more pills to fix everything, supposedly.
Yeah.
Which did not work for me. I know people have said that they've taken antidepressants successfully and all of that. And, I've got no judgment on that. But for me, it was like, this is not going to work.
Sure.
So, yeah.
What I was going to say was that the thing that people look at antidepressants or anxiety medication, different things like that, they look at it from the perspective of what the pharmaceutical companies put out there, that it's okay for everybody.
Yeah.
But what they don't understand is it's not okay for everybody. Not everybody can take every single antidepressant. Not everybody can take an anxiety pill. Everybody is individual. Their body reacts differently to different things. And I think that's where a lot of the medical field, in terms of mental health, has got away from the healing aspect of the work versus, okay, we've got this new thing, we think it's going to work. It's worked for a few of our people that we've done the tests on, so it should be fine for everybody. And that's not the way it works at all. I'm testament to that, because I've been on just about everything that's been out on the market, and there's only ever been 2 combinations of medications that have ever helped to regulate what I've had to deal with. And even at this point, the medication that I'm on currently, I've been on it so long that my body just needs it to
Mm.
function, and it doesn't do anything of the things that it was supposed to do and did for me in the beginning any longer.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I completely understand what you're saying. You get pills on top of pills that create problems on top of problems.
Yeah. And, you may have experienced this. I was going into a doctor, every 3 months
Yeah.
and literally having a 3 to 4 minute conversation
Yes.
and then walking out with a stack of papers to go fill, prescriptions with. And it's like, you know, looking back on it, uh, it's like, I was crazy in that period, but not for the reasons that I thought.
Right.
The craziness is looking back on it and being like, why were you okay with that? That's nuts. Why were you doing that? Like, why were you just
Yeah.
being like, okay, I'll just have this, mini conversation and then just start taking a whole bunch of new medicine.
Right. Did at any point did they suggest any kind of like therapy or anything to assist with that as well?
Yeah, and I did do some of that, spattered in here or there. Um, it was not helpful and probably not enjoyable for any of them, because I was very much at that point had a chip on my shoulder because nothing had really
Work.
given me relief,
Yeah.
and I felt like I have to go through more hoops now. Uh, when I quit cold turkey in 2004, um, I had a friend and he had a business, and I started working for him, and he said, hey, I've got this therapist, I really think she could help you. And I went and, did a handful of sessions with her, and that was actually really helpful. I was kind of like finally in a place to like take some of that information in.
Sure.
One of the things she told me that's always stuck with me, she's sitting there kind of letting me run my mouth,
Yeah.
and she says, I want you to do an exercise when you leave here. She says, whether you're driving or working or whatever, I want when you're going through some of these things, I want you to pause and say, but the truth is, and then complete the sentence.
Oh wow.
Uh,
Okay.
brutal technique because, at the time you know, I had created so much fiction about what was going on with me, what uh, what was other people's fault. I think that the victim mode, especially when it's related to mental health, can be so detrimental to
Yeah.
moving forward
Yeah.
because a person can so easily get stuck there blaming everyone and everything else as opposed to taking ownership of like, what do I need to do to like get to the bottom of why am I so upset or sad or whatever.
Right.
And
Right.
if you're blaming others, you're never going to get there.
Right.
Or just blaming circumstance,
For sure.
which at that stage I was really, that had become a habit, I think, for me.
Okay.
And
And
so
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So, one of the side effects of getting off of all those drugs cold turkey after a while of being on them was, I just like exploded on the scene. And, I just, uh, my wife at the time had literally run off with a friend, very,
Okay.
cliche story. And, it was this kind of amazing culmination of emotions of, we had been together for 17 years, we had a son together,
Right.
horribly sad for that to be ending. But then this other vista opening up of like, well, now you can do anything, because my son was now, um, getting to the age where, him and his buddies were going to get an apartment and all this stuff. And so it's like, well, what do I want to do? And one of the things I wanted to do that around the time that, got pregnant with my son, um, I had started doing gallery shows in San Antonio of my original artwork.
Okay.
And as soon as he was born, I was like, I've got to stay focused on like supporting my wife and kid.
Work. Yeah.
That's got to get set aside, which
Yeah.
is the right decision. I'm not going to, bemoan that at all.
Sure.
So it's so so interesting how the universe opens up to you when you kind of just let yourself go into something, because immediately, one of the things that I did, is I ended up painting, um, every room in the house, like all the walls and ceilings, just you know abstract paintings all over the walls. It was
Okay.
like I was, and I'm cold sweating and like not sleeping and just painting. A
Yeah.
lot bottled up there. But I started going to some art events down in Tacoma, Washington, and just started meeting people, and everything started clicking. And I ended up doing this exhibition at the University of Washington there, which led to the Chamber of Commerce inviting me to be like their first guest speaker for their artist series. Like all this stuff started popping. And my brother, who had been in San Francisco for years at that point, him and his wife, he came up for the show that I did in Washington, and we talked, and he was like, why don't you just move to San Francisco and concentrate on your art? Okay. And I was like, well, that all sounds great, but like, I don't have a way to do that,
Yeah.
And he said, well, I've got this little mother-in-law apartment under my house that's attached to the garage. He said, you could just live there and just do your art. So that's what I did. So in January of 2005, I moved to San Francisco, and I just like one opportunity opened up after another. I ended up doing exhibit at 11 different wineries in Napa, a show out in New York City, at Manhattan, big show in San Francisco, all these things over a couple of years. And during that time, I was also kind of regrouping of like, what do I really want to do, like to support myself, And that's when I was like, well, I want to go back to painting signs, but only if I'm just painting signs.
Right.
Like no computer crap, none of it. Because I'd gotten a taste of that in Seattle, because, the shops that I was in, they were still doing some paint, some gold leaf, but it was definitely moving towards all digital,
Right.
And so at that time, I was looking at, I was having some really great opportunities opening up with the original art. I was doing large scale abstract paintings on canvas.
Okay.
And some really cool stuff was happening. I was being invited to a lot of cool things and meeting really interesting people. And I got to the point where it was like, that was always like this dream fantasy to me from when I was young, like, oh, I want to go be an artist and do all this. And kind of got to look behind the curtain a little bit. Sure. And realized like, okay, if I keep going this direction, I'm a hard worker and people seem to like what I'm doing. And, but I don't know if this is the world I want to inhabit.
Okay.
If that, because
Yeah.
I was doing gallery shows and meeting people, and you're like, these aren't the people I want to spend the rest of my working life around.
Yeah.
Frankly.
Yeah.
So that's when I just was like, you know what? I'm going to kind of merge the two, and I'm going to put as much of my original artistry as I can into the trade that I grew up in. And then that's what I built the studio that I run today on.
Okay. Nice. I want to back up just a little bit. And you mentioned earlier on that the the relationship at 15, that some of that played out with the mental health struggle later on. Can you give a little bit of insight into that? And if you don't, that's fine.
No, you know, it's the life I've lived. I don't shy away from it.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I think I didn't feel bad about it, and I was being told by everyone around me I needed to feel bad about it.
Okay. Got it.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
when I got older, like on, that's more attached to like probably a spiritual side of mental health than, the medical side, like we've been talking about. But
Right.
I really struggled with that. Like, in my 20s, there was a lot of feeling like there was something wrong with me because everybody that was around me in that period, my family, my friends, this was the only group of people I knew,
Yeah.
they were telling me what a horrible thing I had done and that I should just feel horrible about it and that I should like be begging for God's forgiveness about it. And it became an issue because, they have this whole system of counseling if you get off track and that
Okay.
group and
Gotcha.
everything.
Yeah.
And I was driving them crazy because like, I'm like, I don't get it. I don't feel bad. Like,
Right.
I don't
Yeah.
feel like I've done something horrible.
Yeah.
Like, was it the wisest choice? Probably not. But I don't feel like I like went out and murdered somebody.
Yes.
And so when I got into my 20s, and this is part of that duplicity thing, like nobody knew this is going on in my head.
Sure.
I was just living my life and going to work and raising my kid and being married and doing family social things. But inside, I was really struggling with like, what's wrong with me that to this day doesn't bother me now that I'm in my 20s.
Right.
And yeah, so that was a really hard thing for me to overcome. And then, there's people that would interject things like, I had one of my siblings confront me even when I was in my 30s and say, well, you realize that's, that was rape. And I was like, I don't think so. Like, I was a willing participant. Like there was no, it just, the whole thing didn't make sense to me in the sense of everybody saying that it's this and I should feel this way about this event in my life.
Yeah.
But I don't feel that way. Like,
Yeah.
so I eventually came to terms with it and just, we experience things in life and we go through things and those events definitely change our trajectories.
Sure.
But, who doesn't deal with intense situations and things like it's the human experience. And I think what I've come to is, and I don't know how like metaphysical you want to get, but
We can get as metaphysical as you want. I'm
okay.
open to it all.
It's been such a big part of healing and finding balance to me is this, what I see as a commonality, and it has nothing to do with a person's religion or belief system, is it seems to me that a big part, if not the key component of the human experience, is finding our way back to source, God, the universe, however you want to define it.
Yeah.
That we're somehow over here, and throughout life's experiences, we only seem to find peace when we get to that connection, however someone defines it.
Sure.
And that's been my experience. It's been the experience of tons of people that I've talked to and gotten to know, and that's what gave me peace and balance. And as cliche as it might sound, for me, it came through a very committed meditation practice and opening myself up to, when I severed ties completely with my, the religious group that I grew up in.
Yeah.
You're immediately shunned and excommunicated if you do that. And that's what I chose to do. And again, that was very tough and kind of like what I experienced going through the divorce years ago. But at the same time, it opens up something that you've never had available to you before, which is now everything's possible,
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was just so phenomenal because in 2004, I had stopped all of the medications, but I had struggled with alcohol since I was a young teenager.
Oh, okay.
And now I'm, in my late 30s at that point.
Yeah.
And I've stopped all pharmaceutical drugs, but now I'm even more self-medicating with alcohol.
Got you. Okay.
And that went on up into the point where I completely broke ties with the religion. And it was such a profound experience and life-changing experience. And this is, roughly 10 years ago.
Okay.
The person I was involved with at the time, romantically, she was like, I really want to go do yoga and I want you to do it with me. And I was like, it's kind of hippy dippy kind of crap. I don't know if I really want to do that.
Right.
And so I agreed. And fortunately, it was an extremely focused, serious teacher, like teaching genuine yoga practice, not like an exercise class. It was like a very real deal class. And I was about 5 weeks, maybe 6 weeks in. And the teacher came up to me and said, "Can I talk to you?" And I said, "Okay." So she pulls me aside. She's like, "What's going on with you?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" And she says, "You look different. What's going on with you?" And I said, "I don't know how to explain this. I've drank alcohol every night since I was like 13 years old."
Okay.
And I said, "Last week, I have lost all desire for alcohol."
Wow.
And I've not had alcohol since.
Wow.
When you experience something like that, I don't care how anyone listening to this wants to interpret that or spin it or whatever. Like, I've lived it.
Sure.
I know how real that is. I know how profound that is, especially trying to make that work, being in and out of that religion system that I was in. And then again, feeling like a sense of guilt, like, well, why isn't God removing this? Like, I'm praying about it and I'm trying all this stuff to get rid of it. And I'm still like, it's a problem. Like, I can't get rid of it. Like, what is going on?
Yeah.
And then I start doing that, which coincided with a meditation practice, which then led to getting initiated into a very serious meditation practice. And it changed my life. It flipped it completely upside down in the best ways you could imagine.
Yeah.
So,
and two, I just want to say this to the audience. This is your experience. And a lot of times when I'm talking to a guest and I'm talking about the mental health side of things, I'm coming at it from the purview of my personal experience. So I'm sharing what I've dealt with, what I've gone through, so that they have a perspective on that. And it's my experience. I'm not trying to force that on anybody. I'm just
Right.
sharing it, right? And I feel you're doing the exact same thing in this conversation. You're not trying to put it out there that this is the way, this is the only way, whatever. This is just your journey. This is your story, and I just want the audience to maybe reserve some judgment if there is any coming up at this point in the conversation, because again, it's just like the medications. Everybody is different.
Mm-hmm.
Different medications affect different people in different ways. It's the same thing with life. We may experience similar situations that we can relate to based on somebody else's story, but we're not in their story, right? We're not
Yeah.
walking in your shoes.
Well, and that's what's so fascinating about it to me is I've known other people who have had similar results doing completely different things.
Right.
And that it's so fascinating because, and this is where, like, I think that's where I distill it down that there's some kind of disconnect in the human experience. And when, with whatever method, whatever path, whatever, when we can resume that connection, so many of these problems just seem to resolve themselves.
Yeah.
And long term, this isn't like, oh, well, this happened and, a year later I'm still struggling with it or whatever, because there's such a paradigm shift where, I got into deeper conversations with my yoga teacher who, then revealed later that she was actually a very advanced, meditation teacher and initiator in this practice that I ended up. So she
Okay.
was the one who initiated me. And, we got into a lot of conversations about this. And, I told her, I said, with the alcohol, and it was the same with the pharmaceutical drugs, there was always this tension inside, this unease, this tension, this like super uncomfortableness that I couldn't resolve any other way, or at least I thought I couldn't,
Yeah.
and tried to manage it with, whatever substance was prescribed, or with alcohol, or a combination of the both, which is terribly dangerous.
Yeah.
And then to find a spot with whatever gets you there, where that not only it doesn't just go away, you feel it go, you feel it like let go of you. It's
Yeah.
the only way I can describe it. And the clarity that brings, as far as like in conversation like this about spending a lifetime in the arts and creative fields, and then it allowing you to look at, like, okay, what can I actually do to help other people? And your approach to that is having these conversations. My approach is I want to hand down, decades of experience that I can make sure that the craft that I love stays alive. You can only do that if you can ease that unease inside you. If you can get that to dissipate, and it seems to only come through that reconnecting with whatever we're reconnecting with.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Definitely.
I was really fascinated because I was listening to um, a short a while back, and it was Robert F. Kennedy Jr. describing the exact same thing that I just explained to you that I experienced with yoga,
Yeah.
but he experienced that through, like, his faith as a Catholic, and experienced this kind of like almost out of body experience that removed his addictions, and he was describing the same thing, but in getting there in a completely different way, which I thought was
Right.
so fascinating.
Yes. Yes. And again, every person has their own path. Not every path can be walked by the same across the board, right? So it
Yeah,
doesn't the the sense that there's this broad stroke of this is the only way this will work for you is disserving to many, um,
yeah.
because it just isn't that way.
No, no, it's not. And it I think that there's a real danger in life in general, but even more so with issues like mental health, of handing over your um, sovereignty, if you will,
Yeah,
to others, whether it's a pharmaceutical company or a doctor or even, you know, your partner in life, whatever it is. Like, you cannot maintain happiness and balance if you're outsourcing your decisions and choices in life. It just doesn't work.
right, for sure, for sure. Was there, and I want to touch on this just because I've seen it elsewhere, and I just want to see if it resonates in your story. Um, but with that relationship at 15, was there any element that of that ever presented to you in a way, from the perspective of possibly you didn't have the great connection with your mom, and this came along and maybe filled some of that for you in a sense, or
Oh, I'm sure there's some Freudian connection there. you know, I'm not. Um, yeah, I don't have my heels dug in that it was all this or all that. Who knows? I'm
right,
sure. Okay, like um, we all have issues from our parents.
yeah,
I have a lot of affection for my father and a lot of great memories of him.
yeah,
I'm sure he sent me on my own trajectory of dysfunction. I mean, it's inevitable. We all do it to our own children, and they'll do it to theirs.
yeah,
Um, it's just how the whole system seems to operate. Is
for sure,
uh, we're picking up influences and cues throughout life that definitely influence our choices, and so yeah, like uh, I wouldn't doubt it. Put it that way.
got you, got you. All right, stepping into you making this decision of I don't want to be in the fine arts world, so to speak, on
Yeah,
a regular basis. I want to move back into what I know, what I was raised with, what I was skilled at, and make that my own. How was that shift in terms of stepping out of the fine arts world and getting back into what you truly wanted to do?
well, that's a really fascinating thing to me because I had made that choice, and within 2 years was then being presented with opportunities of the two merging.
Okay.
So I was invited into the very first gallery exhibition that had ever been done for sign painting as an art form in San Francisco.
Oh wow.
It was a famous graffiti artist, and he reached out to me and he said, "Hey, I've been watching your career and a couple other of these sign painters, and I own a gallery in San Francisco now, and I want to put on an exhibition because you guys are going through the same path that we went through with graffiti."
Uh,
And he's like, I think you guys have are doing an art form.
yeah.
I was like, what are you talking about? And so I accepted the invitation. All of the work that I put in that show sold before the show even opened.
Oh,
And that led to 7 or 8 other shows around the country that popped up that I ended up getting invited to put my work in, and led to some really like unbelievable opportunities. One of which was being invited by the band The Cranberries to go to Ireland and design and execute a huge art installation based on the name of their first album. um, I did the album cover for the band The Toadies for their Heretics album. You know, it it was so interesting that I thought I was like fully leaving that behind, and then found that the two converged. And the greatest part of it was I didn't have to sacrifice anything.
right.
And for the first time, I was doing something completely on my own terms, an original related specifically to the art, but now it was blended in with like the trade that I grew up in. And
Right.
it still blows my mind. And it's like, I don't even understand what has happened. And, you know, I still get commissions from people that want me to create an original piece for them to put in their home.
Yeah.
You know, so it's not like I'm operating a sign shop anymore. It's like it's turned into this other thing. So in addition to things like gilding, statuary, and things for other artists, I'm also getting commissioned to do original art pieces. I do a lot of what you had mentioned in the beginning. It's called Ver Eglamose, and it's a very ancient process. It goes back to ancient Egypt, and it's a process of creating artwork on glass in reverse, using gold leaf and paints.
Yeah.
And, you know, so it's so strange. The places, you know, I don't know if you've read Rick Rubin's book
I have
about
not, but I've
the creative process. Yeah.
followed him quite a bit.
Yeah. Get that book,
Okay.
because he talks about, he articulates far better than I can a lot of the ideas and things that I've said over the years, but not as eloquently as he does, of course. But it's just this idea that if you tap into that space as a creative person where you're only doing it as a pure expression, and there's no consideration on commercial success, there's no consideration on he's got a great quote. It's a short one. I can't remember what it is exactly, but essentially it is never create work for your audience. It's the biggest mistake you can make. Don't create it for your audience,
Yeah.
because then you're putting it through a filter, and it's not gonna be pure and actually connect with anyone. And it's 100% true. And I really feel like it certainly wasn't some like intellectual achievement on my part. It wasn't like I'm going to do things this way. It was almost even like reaching a point of bewilderment of like, nothing on this planet makes sense to me anymore. I thought I was going to go do these gallery shows and my dreams would come true, and they were starting to, but I'm like, but this is going to be the worst world to inhabit for me. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to be here. This is horrible to me. And so it was just this like, I got nothing, you know, that's kind of where I ended up. It was like, I got nothing left.
Yeah.
And so I just kept going, doing what I did know how to do. And from an uncompromising place of just like, I'm going to just really deep dive and see how good I can really get at this, instead of viewing it as this is how I make a living. Like, how can I really do something really over the top on everything I'm doing?
Right. Right.
And then everything just burst wide open. And did that. I did the project in Nepal. I got to go to Nepal twice in very bizarre circumstances, that were just fantastical.
Yeah.
And in the 90s, which is so interesting to me, that period of struggle that began when my dad died,
Yep.
there were two albums that I listened to over and over and over again.
Okay.
And those two albums were the Toadies and the Cranberries.
Oh, wow.
And then later, those are, two of the bands that I get to do these like dream projects with. It just,
Full
it doesn't
circle.
even make sense. Oh, and then I ended up interviewing Clark, the guitarist of the Toadies, on my podcast years ago. And when the band came into my studio to talk about doing the album cover, I was talking with Clark, and we were just kind of talking about like, oh, where were you in this period? What were you doing in that period? And it turned out that we were in Austin at the same time, when my brother and I had a band, so the first 2 years in Austin, I had just gotten married, and then my son came along, 9 months later.
Yeah.
And me and my brother were playing these bars on 6th Street. And we started talking, and he said, well, what was the name of your band? And I told him, and he said, I remember that band. And I said, no, you don't. Like, it's not like we were a thing, at all.
Yeah.
But we did plaster these flyers everywhere, and it even got written up in the paper because we were like relentless with our flyers for our shows. And it turns out that our very first gig was at this place called the Cave Club, which was in Austin back in the late 80s, early 90s. And it was like it was like an iconic, like new wave, punk place.
Yep.
That like big bands from England would play there, but they were only big bands if you were in that world. Like nobody else knew who they were, but big bands like, well, Psychedelic Furs got big later, but bands like that would play there, Yeah. And that was our first gig. But our first gig, we had 8 people. And Clark was one of the 8 people it turned out to be.
Wow.
And then, and neither of us even figured that out until it was already into the thick of doing this album cover art. And, it was just stuff like that happens, and you're like, I don't understand anything. I don't understand anything works.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I understand the perspective, and there's a lot of creatives out there today, especially in the music industry and world. They don't understand what it was like to do promotion in the 90s, because today you have a smartphone. That's how you do promotion. But I remember those days because of the bands that I was working with back during that time, and having to literally do that to make sure that you drew people to your show and your event.
You didn't exist if you didn't put up flyers, because the newspapers weren't writing on small beginning bands.
Yeah, exactly.
And there was no internet or smartphones. It's like you had to hustle all kinds of ways to get people to like maybe show up,
For sure. For sure. Yeah. Who was the graffiti artist that in
yeah, Andres it's on the tip of my tongue. Oh boy.
That's all right. Do you remember what his handle was?
No, I'm not a graffiti guy at all. Okay. Let me do a quick see if his last name comes up. The gallery was his last name. Anyways, I can't find it offhand, but right. He was like one of the key figures in that whole thing, I guess, and did really well, so well that he opened a really high-end gallery in San Francisco. And
Yeah.
so that was in that would have probably been like maybe 8 or 9 that I was invited into that show.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious because I've followed a few graffiti artists over the years, and my taste in art has spanned many different industries,
Mm.
um, and I've pulled inspiration from all of it. So it was just fascinating that were talking about a graffiti artist really reaching out to you, um, and saying, "Hey, we see what you're doing, and we view that as art as well." Which was the exact same thing that I had pop in my head when I saw your stuff. I was like, "Holy cow!" Like I've looked at this stuff since I was a kid when I would go to my grandparents' house in East Tennessee. Like almost everything that we'd see there would either be an advertisement painted on the top of a barn, um,
Hmm.
on top of walls of buildings for Mr. Pibb or Dr. Pepper or any
Hmm.
of those different brands. So I've always seen it um, from that perspective, and you were explaining it in one of the videos that I mentioned I was watching of yours the other day. You were explaining it as that was the ad agency's way of getting that out there.
Yeah, well, and that was like what you were saying about bands in the 90s and 80s.
Exactly. Yep.
Is like the sign painter guy was tasked with like, hey, we've got this stuff to sell.
Yeah.
How can you get people to pull over on the side of the road and come buy it?
Right.
You know?
Yep.
And then of course, everything became very sophisticated branding and all of this stuff. But I mean, the principles are all there, and those of us that, you know, had the fortunate experience of learning before computers,
Yep.
and there's certain instances where we might shortcut something by printing a pattern instead of tracing it on a with a projector or something like that. But to still have learned all of the basic principles of something before computers was a real gift.
Yeah. And and I we had mentioned this before we started recording too, that the thought, or at least the perspective of putting this back out there to this younger generation that's coming up as an opportunity to develop a skill, a creative skill that they could use going forward, and be able to use it in multiple ways, which
Yeah.
is going to be highly beneficial. And as soon as you started saying that, I was like, oh, yeah, absolutely. I can see it, because I can see it um, from the fashion world perspective, where there's
Hmm.
a whole bunch of younger designers that are coming up right now that are looking at trying to do things that are not fast fashion, but are
Hmm.
that craftsmanship fashion, um,
Yeah.
using old garments and repurposing them into new garments. So you're not having to create from a roll of fabric. You're just using what's already there.
Okay.
Different things like that, and I think those are going to be beneficial to society in and of itself. But I also see it from the perspective of a lot of things are just cyclical. They
Yeah, and
eventually
I
come to
I
an end.
I agree with that, and I had a conversation the other day with another sign painter. Everybody in these fields is paying close attention to AI.
Right,
Like
right.
what is that going to do? What's that
Yeah,
going to mean? And the the place I've landed, we things have been cyclical, but I think that's going to be the disruptor. But what I don't see what I'm seeing evolve in my own career and the people that reach out to me is, especially over the last 7 years,
Yeah.
it is the value people are putting on something that somebody made by hand with traditional methods is like nothing I've ever seen before.
Yeah.
It's really genuinely meaningful to people now. And I think that's going to only increase with AI, where AI is clearly going to do things that we can't even wrap our brains around. I mean, just in 6 months, the jump is crazy.
Oh yeah.
But I think where that's going to land is it's going to be a really wonderful opportunity for people doing traditional methods and work, to engage with people in a whole new way. I like I mentioned, I have people that have commissioned me to do pieces for their home that um, like taps into a memory of some place that they used to go to with their dad when they were a kid,
Yeah.
and so they want me to paint an original piece of artwork that somehow incorporates a sign into that, stuff that 15, 20 years ago, like nobody in these trades would have believed that somebody would even want that, let alone be willing to pay for that.
Right.
But I see it more and more and more. I just completed a Eglamazé project for private residents in the Hill Country, this beautiful custom home. And this, the people who built the home, in addition to the pieces that I did for them, have brought in like old handcrafted stuff from all over France to build out the interior features of their home,
Oh wow.
because they're just fanatical. The husband came by and visited me here in the studio at the beginning of the project, and he was just so enamored. And like I whenever someone comes in the studio, I usually will cut off a piece of the actual gold leaf and have them touch it to see how thin it is. And
Yeah.
it's a really, I don't know if you've had a chance to interact with it, but it's mind
Yes.
blowing that it does what it does.
Very delicate.
And yeah, but just the passion is off the charts with people like that now. Of like, you know, they want to participate in the preservation of something still being done by hand. And fortunately, there's people that have the resources to still pay for something that will take you a month to execute.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. With one of the uh, opportunities you've had is you've been able to work with Jesse James.
Mm-hmm.
Was that opportunity while he was still out in Long Beach, or was that an opportunity that came after he moved to Austin?
That was after he moved to Texas. That particular uh, project was for there's a family in Texas that is one of the wealthiest families in Texas, and they have an incredible car collection, and they commissioned that bike to be built by him.
Okay.
And so that project was for them on one of his bikes. Um, I Yeah, I don't want to get into too much on that.
Okay. Okay. Gotcha.
Um, yeah, there's people that I've come across in my work that I adored, and people that not as much.
Understood.
So
Understood.
I'll give you an example. So I got a call. This was maybe around 2010, and was an email, and it was asking for something, and I saw the name, and I was like, "That's crazy. He's got the same name." but it wasn't the same name. It turned out to be Lindsey Buckingham of Fleetwood Mac. And so another band that,
Oh yeah. Oh
big,
yeah.
big part of my life, the soundtrack of my life.
Sure.
And so I ended up doing this project for him and his wife down in Beverly Hills when I was in California still. And super, super nice guy, super humble, down to earth. Like, for those of us that are a little older, there's like, you take these bands like Led Zeppelin, Fleetwood Mac, they're not human.
Right.
If you grew up in a different area, there's just something so larger than life you can't wrap your brain around it.
Yeah.
So I got down there and worked at this location for them a couple days, and he came up and introduced himself, and I'm kind of shocked. He's actually very tall, but super nice guy. Had a lot of really great questions. And then he says, "Would it be all right with you if I sat and watched you do this gold leaf work?" And so, he ends up sitting there for hours just doing small talk while I'm working in the most stressful job of my life because, this larger than life music icon. But right. He was fantastic. Super cool guy.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I want to shift now into the opportunity that came around for you to go to Nepal, because you talked about how this yoga experience started changing things for you and changing them in drastic ways. But also too, I'm guessing is opening up a sense of spirituality versus religion that you.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting way to put it because whatever religious system you're raised in, those two words are presented to you interchangeably.
Yeah.
And then when you experience something larger, you realize those two things are not interchangeable or connected at all.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that was, I'm never good on timelines or dates, but that was roughly a year and a half to 2 years after I started my meditation practice.
Okay.
I believe maybe a little over a year to a year and a half. I had a friend that I've been riding motorcycles since I was 11 years old.
Okay.
And I had a buddy that, we used to ride together, and he called me up. I was actually on a project up in Ohio for a client, and he said, "Hey, I'm going to do." He's a photojournalist. And he says, "I'm going to do this story on this thing in Nepal, up in the mountains, and we've got." There's like 5 of us photojournalists going, and we're going to go ride motorcycles and go through the mountains. And I'm like, well, that sounds fantastic. Thanks for telling me how great your experience is going to be. But he says one of the photojournalists dropped out, and I was just asked, is there anyone that you feel would be a good fit to drop into his place? And I was like, I'm up on a ladder painting,
Right.
And I'm like, give me a few minutes. I got to think about this. And hung up, and like 3 minutes later, called him right back. I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about, but yes, I'm going, I got to go do this, And so that was 2018, spring of 2018.
Okay.
That we went out. That happened in 17, I guess, late 17 that he called. Went in spring of 18 and just had not only a phenomenal experience, but, and again, it sounds cliche, but like had such a powerful transformational experience there.
Yeah.
Like something shifted in me for real.
Yeah.
And I came back and I was having lunch with some friends of mine in Dallas. They're filmmakers. They have a company called Explordinary, and they do art docs. They do docs on artists primarily. And so we were having lunch, and they wanted to get the download of like, so what was Nepal like, And so I'm telling them about all this incredible craftsmanship and all this phenomenal stuff and these temples and I'm just like, just spilling out all of this stuff. And they're like, oh my God, we've got to make a documentary. And we all agreed at that lunch, like we have no path forward, like how to do this as far as like financing, nothing. Like we don't know how in the world, but we all agreed if we can put it together, we got to go do this. We got to document this because they're also big passionate people on, from their perspective, documenting traditional craftsmanship methods, some of which is disappearing daily right now.
Yeah.
And so I won't get into the details, but just otherworldly events start happening over a period of about 5-6 months. And all of a sudden, everything falls into place, including the resources to go and shoot the documentary that we shot.
Nice.
And so we go there in March of 2019. And we're all, we started in Kathmandu. We're filming all of these craftspeople and, the family of wood carvers that are 14th generation, same family doing the wood carving, just insanely great stories.
Yeah.
And then we go out into the mountains where I paint this big mural on a school. And while we're out there, unbeknownst to any of us, because we're all disconnected, the whole COVID thing started. Oh. And so we get back to Kathmandu and they start locking everything down. And so the filmmakers had a film project in London that they had to go to after Nepal. So they left, and my wife and I were going to stay. We were going to stay an additional week in Kathmandu, and then we were going to go into India to Varanasi, where they do the ceremonies on the Ganga River. Okay. And something we've both always like bucket list thing, and we're like, we're going to be that close, we got to go do that. So that was going to be the next thing for a week or whatever. And so Dan and Sarah, the filmmakers, they get out, and like the next day we get notices in our emails that all flights canceled, borders shut, all of that. So now we're stuck.
Oh man.
And like, you're in a very different foreign country. You're not just like in Canada, like you're in a place where everything's different.
Right.
And fortunately we had some really great people step forward that like, knew that the situation was crazy and was like, made sure that we had a place to stay and things like that while we were figuring out what to do. And then what ended up happening was there was a Facebook group. We got a text from the American consulate.
Okay.
And it said, if you are an American and you're stuck in Nepal, then join this Facebook group so we know who's there and who's where and what we can do. Yeah. There ended up being over 10,000 Americans there at the time.
Oh, wow.
And they said, put your name on, fill out this form. They've created this online form and fill out all this information. And it included who we are and what we were doing there. And there ended up being 2 planes chartered to fly out Americans. And we ended up on one of them. And the reason is the Dallas Observer magazine had been covering the story of us going to Nepal to do this doc.
Okay.
And they ended up calling and saying, hey, we heard you're stuck there, but the filmmakers got out. And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, would you like to do a story explaining what's going on from your vantage point? So we did. And what turned out is we got out on the second plane.
Okay.
Everybody, thousands of other people were there for like almost a year before the flights were reopened. And what it turned out when we were actually on the plane leaving Kathmandu, everybody started talking. Everybody on that plane had been tapped because there was press on them. And I think they just wanted to get those people out so they'd shut up. Maybe, I don't know.
Oh man.
Yeah. So, but so I guess I'm really veering off with that. But so we shot the doc, and then once we got back, it took several years. The reason we shot it in 2019 and it wasn't released till 2024 because they, in addition to heavy editing, they were coming from Dallas down to our studio in Central Texas and doing, backstory interviews, backstory footage, piecing the whole thing. It's an enormous undertaking, ridiculous amount of hours they spent on it. But I don't know. Did you say you watched that?
Yes. It was phenomenal.
The cinematography and the job they did is just next level.
Yeah.
Just beautiful, beautiful film. And such a great thing because, those people's stories are documented and preserved now. Yes. Of, the crafts that they've kept alive over there. And that's we really feel like that's a big win that we got to do that,
Yeah. The thing that touched me the most was the conversation you had with the printmaker. And you were able to go up and sit down and he made you tea.
Yeah.
That piece of the film made me emotional because I could see,
me too.
I could see it was just purely a creative connection between two individuals as well as a sharing of hospitality.
I will tell you something. Take it for what you will.
Okay.
But this happened. So we weren't planning on filming with him. We didn't know that he was there. And the night before, I had a very vivid dream that I was talking to that guy in that room drinking that tea. That is, I'm 100%. That's what I experienced. Take it for what you want. The next day, Susan, the tour guide in the movie that was, taking us and translating and things, she said, we're in Bhaktapur. We're not far from the Peacock Window. And we're like, what's the Peacock Window? And then she's like, oh, it's this famous wood carving. So we're like, oh, let's go check it out. So we go and check it out. And then she's like, oh yeah. And this guy he makes his own paper, his own books. And we're like, well, let's go. And so she goes and hunts him down and says, would it be all right if they talked to you and interviewed you?
Yeah. And
so that all just kind of all organically happened that morning. But that's what I experienced.
Listen, I believe in dreams. I believe those things happen for reasons. And like I said, that part of the film was truly emotional for me. Like I could feel and sense that connection, that feeling of hospitality that he was sharing, having you into his home space. and it was very profound. I mean, I highly recommend the audience go and look up this documentary, Art is Love, Nepal, because it's amazing craftsmanship that you don't have to go to Nepal to see it. You can see it in this documentary because of the way that it's shot. It's very intricate and up close enough to where you can understand the amount of work, the energy, the love that goes into these pieces that they're creating. And like you said, some of them are just, they're creating this because it's generational for them.
Yeah.
It's like this is the thing that they were supposed to do to carry
Yeah.
on these legacies.
Well, and it's such an interesting thing over there too, because here in the West in general, I would say, um, like spirituality is like, depending on where you grow up and how you grew up, that's like something you do on Sunday. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yes.
There, it's interwoven in every aspect of everything.
Yes.
And until you're there, you don't even understand like that something could be approached that differently. But it's a beautiful thing because they're like what you just said, like they're generationally doing what it is that they're supposed to be doing. And that's how they feel about it. It's like this is their purpose, you know. And
Right.
it's a really beautiful, beautiful thing.
Yeah. How how is those types of experiences, um, since you started doing them and experiencing them, has it changed the mental uh, struggles potentially since then, or has it become
What exactly are you referring to?
the experience of starting to do the yoga,
Mm-hmm.
then being able to go over to Nepal and experience that culture and the way of looking at spirituality with them? Has that allowed the maybe some of the chatter that you experienced over the years with the mental health scenarios to quiet or to
Yeah,
potential?
I would say in my case, you know, your mileage may vary, but in my case,
Sure.
and from what I've read, many other people have had this experience. The the meditation practice is, I view that as like one of my tools,
Okay.
and it really does wonders for me personally in managing when I'm feeling stress building or I'm feeling anxious or I'm feeling like I'm not centered. um you know, it's that daily meditation practice that kind of just puts me back to a baseline.
Okay.
And then the yoga practice, um which I'm just recently getting back into a rhythm. I've from the beginning of meditation, I've been very regular with that. But yoga, I did that for about 3 years, like very intensely,
Okay.
you know. And then when I got off track with that and have recently got back on track with that, that is more of a I mean, it depends on how you want to define it or identify it, but it seems that there is some kind of an energetic force that we carry around in ourselves,
Yep.
and the movement of those yoga positions really seems to move that energy in a way that is connected to our emotional state.
Right.
So both of those things really do tremendously good things for me as far as managing. You know, life is stressful. Like you know,
Yes. Yes.
and how could you conjure up more stressful than our current times? You know, like everybody's stressed out right now. You know,
Yeah.
about something. You know, you pick it, and someone's upset about it.
Yeah.
But Yeah, it's really been a incredible tool set for me of managing that stress in a way that you know 10 years in now it hasn't been a temporary fix, you know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah.
I figure if you're a decade into something and it's still working, you're probably solid on it.
Yeah. That's where I wanted to go with um, that question, because a lot of times, and again, this is from the perspective of you and I having this conversation, both of us experiencing being on medications for depression, anxiety, and so on and so forth. And then for you finding something outside of the traditional medicine that's helped for you. For me, it's been working with an intuitive healer who's
Hmm.
helped me tap back into those original traumas and different things like that. Um,
Yeah.
I've tried to do the meditation thing at particular points in time. I always get caught up in the breathing aspect of it. For whatever reason, there's just that little glitch in my head that I can't stay focused long enough
Hmm.
to. Um,
Yeah, and when you say meditation, like anything, there's pretty broad spectrum.
sure.
So like I'm initiated into it's a mantra based
Okay.
um, meditation practice that is it's a very ancient system,
Okay.
but in modern terms, it's probably most closely resembles like TM, transcendental meditation, in the
Gotcha.
sense that it's a teacher issues you the mantra, you go through initiation, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And at this at this stage in your career, what what are some of the things that you're looking at moving forward with that you are excited about doing, um, and are taking steps towards those things?
Well, uh, that's shifted a lot for me
Okay.
as well. And I've only gotten clarity on that in probably the last year. Um, it's kind of interesting, when you're struggling with anxiety, depression, these kind of things. Um, it's almost like having a radio on really loud in the room,
Yes.
and you're trying to think.
Yes.
And so when you finally can get the volume turned down, which for me, pharmaceuticals didn't work because it would turn the volume down, but it turns the volume down on everything. And I just went into veg mode. But when I was able to get a handle on it in the way that worked for me, I've I don't want to make it sound grandiose, but the focus now is what can I do to help other people um, pursue the creative stuff that's given me so many great experiences.
Okay.
I'm in by no means done doing what I do,
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
but the driver I think was attached to the anxiety and the depression and things like that. Of there's probably on some subtle level feeling like I needed to make myself valid by accomplishing something or getting some notoriety or getting known for something.
Right.
Um, and I hopefully, just like, I've had a good decade now, I feel like that has been put to rest as well. Where one of my favorite quotes, I have no idea where it comes from, who said it originally, but um, be kind because everyone you meet is fighting their own battle, something to that effect.
Yeah. Yeah.
And everyone's getting their ass kicked every day, man. It's true. Like everybody's struggling with something. Whenever I've gotten like a little bit irritated with somebody because they're doing something that's irritating me, and then I find out like 2 weeks later, oh man, they're going through this thing. Of course they were short with me or didn't call back. Everybody's struggling with stuff, and if I can in the grand scheme, it's a very small thing, I feel, but if I can, in my small way, contribute something to somebody enriching their experience in their time on this planet by, if you are like me,
Right.
and from a young age, you've always loved making stuff and doing stuff and working with creative people. And if I can give you some of the knowledge to help you continue to do that,
Yeah.
like that's what I want to spend my time doing. And that's what I'm building. We were talking earlier, we're just about to launch, it's called Painters Cafe. And it's a membership site where it's gonna, over time, I've got other older sign painters involved. It's just going to be like an information dump. We've got so many young people that have reached out to all of us since the Sign Painters film came out, just, wanting the experience of like apprenticing or, how do I do this? How do I do that? But
Right.
I think this is going to be a way that we're going to be able to make that feasible to where we can actually devote time to it. People can get the information. It's walled off, so you don't have all of the like social media crap of bots and things, people you don't know chiming in.
Right.
I think it's the right fit for the right time to do this. And um, as far as on my actual personal, the work that I do here in the studio, um, I've kind of had an ongoing bet with myself to make whatever I'm working on better than the last thing.
Okay.
And that's going to continue because that's fun to me.
Right. Right.
I like seeing if I can outdo, like if I look at something and say, wow, like I nailed it on that.
Yeah.
I'm immediately replaced that with, yeah, but what can I do on the next one? And so that keeps me going. But in big picture stuff, it's, I've been flown all over the world doing what I do and met amazing people, had amazing experiences. And by no means do I hope or think that's over.
Right. Right.
But if I can help somebody else along their path, get to the point where they can experience some of those things, what could be cooler than that?
Right. Right. For sure. I think that's a great place for us to end today.
Yeah,
And
we talked a lot. I apologize if I dragged that out.
no, it was beautiful. It was the journey, and that's what I want the audience to experience is the journey from your perspective. Um, you didn't talk too much. You just told your story and shared the things that were meaningful to you, and also the perspective from the mental health side of things, which is very important to what I'm trying to do with this platform.
Yeah,
And again, I appreciate you being willing to share it, being open. Um, and I always want to leave the audience with one final thought as we close out, and that is always listen to your heart, but be kind to your mind.
yeah. Amen to that.
Cool.
Yep.
That's it, brother. You can.
Okay.